So I just finished Sonic Forces, and it's actually really good. I'm enjoying. I enjoyed it a lot. I'll probably be playing more of it, trying to get all the MS ranks and whatnot. But yeah, it's actually a good game. Surprisingly, I didn't have super high expectations for this game because some of the some of the pre-release footage looked pretty not great, and there is definitely some not great level design in here, but there's also a lot to like. First and foremost, this game has really good set pieces and really hype moments, which has really always kind of been what the Sonic franchise has built itself on. That was kind of what Sonic had over Mario, was that it could really deliver on this hype, whereas Mario was more of charming rather than hype. In particular, once it made the jump to 3D, Sonic went all in on hype moments, often at the expense of actually good mechanics and level design. So that's not ideal. But yeah, that's kind of the identity of the series, and Sonic Forces does not change that to any degree. That's still absolutely the case here, and I think that this is probably the best example of it so far. I think that this game has some really excellent hype moments that really get the blood pumping. The boost gameplay is also pretty good, as I pretty much expected it to be. It works basically the same as in other games for the most part. Not exactly the same. You don't have a drift button anymore, and I feel like the homing attack has been changed slightly. It feels like it takes a little bit longer to lock onto enemies, and it's a little bit looser than in previous games, which is less than ideal, but it still works fine. It's still pretty good. Yeah, I mean, the boost gameplay is still very much enjoyable in this game. Surprisingly, the Avatar gameplay is also really solid. I thought that it looked pretty not great in the lead-up, but I found myself really enjoying it, especially once I got later into the game and had a few different weapons at my disposal and started actually changing them up and experimenting with them a bit. Early in the game, even after I got my third and fourth weapon, I stuck with the second one, the lightning one, because that gives you a light speed dash. But later on, I started experimenting more with different weapon types and found that they're all really cool and useful, and the game makes good use of them by basically locking different alternate routes through the Avatar levels behind skillful use of your weapons, or wispons as they're called. They're weapons that are powered by wisps, I guess. It's pretty neat. But yeah, they actually made really good use of the weapons and tied them into the different, finding different routes and seeing which is the fastest kind of gameplay that Sonic has been known for. And they also did a good job of not just making it, oh, you have this weapon, so now you get to automatically enter this path. If in order to find these alternate paths, you're sometimes going to need to make really efficient use of your weapons and really demonstrate that you do know how they work and what to do with them. So yeah, very good stuff. The avatar customization is also really good in general. I mean, obviously you can switch out your weapons, but you've also got lots of different clothing options available to you, as well as being able to be different species and colors, obviously, and even choosing voices. And what I really like about the customization options is that you have a lot of very genuinely good clothing options that look cool or cute or whatever aesthetic you're going for. Yeah, whatever you're going for, you're gonna have options for it. You've got options that are gonna make you look badass. You've got options that are going to make you look adorable, and you've got abjectly terrible options that you can use to make hilarious abominations, which is something that I value in a custom character creator. I like being able to make myself look terrible in the most hilarious way possible. And this game allows you to do that, but also allows you to make a cool, awesome, and/or cute character if that's more the route you wanted to go. And that's actually the route that I chose to go this time. And I'm glad that I did, because it made some of the story bits easier to take seriously, but more on that later. The game is also really structured in a cool way, where it's a mission-based system, and you can choose missions from a list. You don't have any sort of in-between missions hub world to explore like in your Adventures or your 06s or your... I'm pretty sure Unleashed also had that. None of that. You just go to the mission and do the mission and get a score on the mission at the end. And there's not even a level that you run around in to select missions like in Generations. It's just a map, and there's also a mission list that you can choose missions from. But what's really cool is that they have what are called SOS missions, which ties into both the theming of the game and into the gameplay. Because the idea behind SOS missions is that somebody in your anti-Eggman resistance is in trouble and you gotta go give them a hand. And so obviously, that ties into the theming of the game as Sonic, the other Sonic, and your avatar character are kind of like the heroes of the resistance who are really like leading the front lines and helping out, but you've also got like an actual, you know, freedom fighter army behind you. In addition to that, you're not the only one standing up. And then from a game structure perspective, these basically give you a reason to go back and revisit older levels, and they basically tell you, yes, this is a game where you are going to want to go back and revisit older levels and try to do them better and try to learn them more. Which is another cool thing about the SOS missions. A lot of them work on this system of you have to find a capsule, that a classic Sonic style capsule that the freedom fighter is trapped inside of somewhere in the level. You gotta find it, you gotta let him out. And that, you know, that basically means that on these SOS missions you're going to need to slow down a bit and actually learn the level. You know, you got to explore it and try to find where that capsule is somewhere in the level. You can't just go through it as fast as possible, because you're going to be blasting straight past it if you do that. I know, because I did that the first few times. So they sort of serve two different purposes from a gameplay perspective. Of one, they tell you, yes, you're going to want to go back and redo levels. This is that kind of a game where you practice levels and you keep doing them over and over again until you're great at them. And two, they force you to explore the levels a bit more and actually start learning them, which of course is going to come in handy when you do go back and start trying to improve your ranking and your timing on the levels. There's also a leaderboard system for the best time in each level, so that further emphasizes that yes, you do want to be refining and getting better and better at these levels and getting faster and faster at them. Very cool stuff. This was something that I felt was kind of lacking in Generations. It was way too easy to just kind of blast straight through that game in like a sitting or two and never feel like you need to come back to it, when really that game was very heavily built around replaying levels and refining your approach and getting better at them. Not that this game is completely better in that regard. Generations had a much higher skill ceiling. There was a lot of room for improvement in that game. It just didn't do a good job at telling the player, hey, you should be doing that. Whereas Forces has the exact opposite problem, where it has too low of a skill ceiling. It's actually a pretty easy game. I was playing through on hard mode and never had much trouble. And you know, once you've gotten that S rank, you're probably pretty close to as fast as you can get through the level without getting into speedrunning tactics like abusing glitches and whatnot. So it has a much lower skill ceiling, but it does a better job of getting players to that skill ceiling. But yeah, I mean, given the choice between the two, I think that I would rather have that higher skill ceiling. But it's cool that there's actually a system in place to try to get players to even bother with it. You know, that's definitely a step up compared to earlier Boost-style Sonic games. Other than that, the story is really actually very good, I found. I really enjoyed the writing in this game. A lot of people have tried to portray this game as being overly edgy, and it takes itself too seriously because Eggman is an actual threat this time around, I guess. That makes it too self-serious and too edgy. This is something that I kind of talked about on Twitter. It seems like because of the fact that there have been edgy, badly written Sonic games, which there absolutely have. I'm not about to come in here and start defending, you know, Shadow the Hedgehog or Sonic 06 or whatever. But because of the fact that those games happened and were bad, people seem to have this idea now that like Sonic games just shouldn't try to tell a serious story ever. And they should either just have like a weak framing device like Generations did, or they should just be on a constant self-parody trip like Sonic Colors was. Which, you know, don't get me wrong, I liked Sonic Colors and I enjoyed the writing in that game. I thought that it was a nice change of pace. But just constantly making fun of itself does get tiring. It does wear out its welcome, and, you know, I found myself wishing that Sonic Colors had more of like an actual emotional narrative through line to it, which Sonic Forces does a really good job of providing. And yes, it does so by sometimes being pretty serious and pretty cheesy and having goofy stuff happen, but it's never so goofy that you can't take it seriously. At least it was never so goofy that I couldn't. You know, your mileage is obviously going to vary on this. How much cheese factor you're willing to put up with is a pretty subjective thing from person to person, but I never found it to be a problem, and I found most of the story to be pretty easy to take seriously without having to worry too much about, oh, that's dumb and edgy. Except for Shadow's lines, but he's supposed to be dumb and edgy, you know, that's his character. But yeah, and it also had good comic relief. I found that the humor in this game hit like a really nice sweet spot where it was goofy and fun and kind of a little self-parodic, but never to the point where it felt like obnoxiously meta or anything. And it was definitely never like bad Saturday morning cartoon writing like some of the earlier Sonic games could get into being with their funny moments, quote unquote. But yeah, the actual story itself is really well done. Right at the beginning, Sonic gets his ass kicked by the new villain, Infinite, and is held in Eggman's prison on the Death Egg for 6 months. And Eggman basically takes over the entire world. For once, Eggman is an actually threatening villain who actually manages to be successful in his plan and have a well done plan, which is something that keeps coming up over the course of the game. The Resistance Force, in particular Tails, are constantly underestimating Eggman and assuming, oh, we've always been one step ahead of him, it'll be just the same now. And Eggman has actually learned from his previous mistakes and has actually put together a much better, more workable plan that requires some real effort on the hero's part to foil. It's really good. And the arc for the Avatar character is also surprisingly good. The character is first introduced as just like a new recruit to the Resistance Force, who is one of the nameless soldiers on the initiative to go and rescue Sonic from the Death Egg prison. And it's later revealed that this character has previously had a run-in with Infinite and was completely, utterly unable to do anything against Infinite because this is an incredibly powerful villain character, and had to run away basically. And then in the second, and so they're kind of insecure about this fact. They kind of feel like a coward, but they manage to successfully bust Sonic out of prison and manage to really be like a genuine help to the Resistance forces at several points over the course of the game, teaming up with Sonic and whatnot, and this kind of boosts their confidence. And then the second time on their second run-in with Infinite, they now have the self-confidence and the courage to actually properly face him, which is a very cool moment that I'm not going to get into like the super specifics of, but trust me, it's very good. And by the end of the game, they are an absolutely indispensable member of the Resistance Force and end up single-handedly like saving the entire Resistance army in one scene. Very cool stuff. It's a pretty simple arc. Underdog who is not that powerful and not very sure of themselves over the course of the game manages to be successful at things and kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps and find the courage to really come in and save the day. It's very simple stuff, but it's well done, and I feel like that should be commended. And, this is all, of course, done through the lens of a very charming and very fun, hype Sonic adventure where you've got quips going off all over the place and Sonic's doing cool stuff and you get to team up with him and you fist bump him when you do well, and it's all fun. You get to be Sonic's friend, and that's cool. That's also a very simple kind of thing and kind of silly and childish, but it's fun, It doesn't matter, it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem that something is kind of juvenile if it is still fun in that juvenileness, Like, I don't think that games should have to worry so much about being seen as mature as long as they can be enjoyable in immaturity. I mean, it's one thing if a game is immature in a way that just comes across us as laughable and isn't fun, but that's definitely not the case with Sonic Forces. I found all of the juvenile aspects of it to be very fun and to very much, I'm saying fun too much, but they really sort of bolster the enjoyment of the game. They really work well with the set pieces and the hype moments and just result in a very satisfying experience overall. I mean, I've been very positive for the most part, other than some very light criticism of the boost gameplay, but I do want to be clear that like I'm not going to completely recommend this game without any caveats. I like it a lot, but it does have some big problems. Like, not little problems like certain other games that I've recommended have, where I'm just like, oh, I should probably mention this because this game isn't perfect. Like, no, Sonic Forces does have some serious flaws. It is not by any means an amazing game. It's not even my favorite Sonic game, honestly. But I do want to be clear that it is very good. But it does have major problems. First of all, the classic Sonic levels, one, should not have been in the game in the first place, and two, are just okay. Like they are completely fine and functional. They have okay-ish level design, not particularly good level design. Sonic Team is not very good at actual platforming level design. What they're good at is boost level design that is cool and fun to run through, but they are not good at anything that requires precision platforming. It just doesn't work very well. It's not very smart level design, and it's you know, the classic Sonic levels they're not like a drag or anything. They're not terrible, but they are the most neutral part of the game. They're the part that I'm like, oh, it's a classic Sonic level. Okay, fine, whatever. But they're definitely not the worst thing on display here. What is the worst thing on display is the 2D segments where you play as either Modern Sonic or the Avatar. These are just absolutely terrible. They are the worst part of the game. By a wide margin. The physics in these 2D segments with the modern characters feel very odd. You have like this weirdly specific amount of momentum where it's not no momentum that allows you to turn on a dime, but it's also not so much momentum that you can get across like massive gaps by just building up speed. It's like this really weirdly specific amount of momentum that's like more than none but less than you think, and I could never really wrap my head around it. There are points where I would end up failing at the same like platforming segment of just trying to get across some platforms many times just because the physics seem like almost inconsistent. I don't think that they're actually inconsistent, but it felt that way at times. Yeah, they were just really weird to wrap my head around. I think that there might actually be like different amounts of horizontal control depending on whether you're on the ground or in the air. I haven't like really like thoroughly checked that to make sure that it's true, but it kind of felt that way. Yeah, it's weird. It doesn't feel great. The camera isn't like far back enough for me to really feel like I had a good view of what was coming up ahead of me during these segments, and they just control odd, and I just don't like them. And they have no real reason to be there because the boost gameplay is so much better, and we've already got classic Sonic for completely adequate 2D gameplay, so why even have 2D segments as Avatar and Modern Sonic? They don't serve much purpose. They're easily the worst part of the game, and it would be a much better game if they just weren't in there at all. Frankly, it would be a much better game if there were just no 2D gameplay in it at all, and it was all boost Sonic all the time. I am still holding out hope for a boost-style Sonic game that is just all 3D boost gameplay without any of this bad or at best mediocre 2D gameplay, because it's clear that modern Sonic Team is not good at 2D level design. They just do not fundamentally know how to do it well. But what they do know how to do well is make a fun boost level that you run through and you activate set pieces and you run from stuff and you run towards stuff and you just you know, you just have a series of simple but not trivial challenges to overcome, you know, timing-based challenges and that sort of thing. That's what they're good at. That is what boost gameplay is at its core. It's a series of simple but not trivial challenges. You know, they are small challenges that are difficult enough to feel worthwhile and gratifying, but simple enough that they're never hard to comprehend. And that is the strength of the boost gameplay, is that it hits this very cool, very good sweet spot of difficulty versus simplicity that allows it to just flow very naturally and feel fast and fluid and fun. You know, the 3 Fs. And none of that is present in the 2D segments, and they're just this huge, like, they slow the pacing down without it feeling like you're being given room for a breather. It just feels like you're being slowed down arbitrarily and that it's not fun. And yeah, I really feel that this game would be a lot better if it just didn't have any 2D segments. While we're on the subject of ways that I would improve the level design, I would also say that a lot of the levels in this game are really short. Like, it's not at all uncommon for me to get through a level in like 2 minutes or less in this game, when that was like the best time that I could hope to achieve in a boost level in Sonic Generations. Yeah, they're very short levels. There's a lot of them. There's like 30 levels, but they're each short. They are very short. You know, it took me about 5 or so hours to get through this game. And yeah, all of these levels it was just a bunch of little tiny bite-sized levels, you know? And I think that it probably would have been better if instead of going for a bunch of really short levels, the game had fewer levels, but they were longer. And I think that that would have also made each level feel more like worthwhile and more substantial and well designed in itself. Because as it stands, most of the levels have like a good thing, and then you get past that good thing, and then you're at the end of the level, and it's like, oh well, that was cool, I guess, but you know, I kind of want more than one good thing per level. And I think that if they had gone with fewer longer levels, then what they could have done is just have multiple good things per level, and that would have made each level feel like it was more of a worthwhile endeavor, and feel like it was better just by nature of having more than one cool set piece, you know? I think that would have been a much better way to structure the game overall, and that probably would have also allowed for the ranking system and the time, you know, improving times to have a higher skill ceiling, because, or not necessarily a higher skill ceiling, but like to start you at a lower skill floor, because then it wouldn't be, oh, get through this like minute and a half worth of challenges. It's now you've got like multiple minute and a half challenge segments that you have to learn separately and get through all together at once, rather than it just being, as long as you can get through each of these minute and a half challenge segments in isolation, then you can get an S rank on each one. You know, now it's, here's 1 minute and a half challenge segments, get through all 5 of them and get an S rank. But yeah, I think that the game would have definitely been served much better by just having longer levels in general, and of course by removing the mediocre at best 2D segments. But you know, all of that being said, I still really enjoyed the game. I had a lot of fun with it. Oh, I also played through the free DLC episode Shadow, which is a little prequel thing. It was pretty cool. It was just some repurposed levels from the main game, which, you know, what do you expect from free day one DLC? But you know, they were competently put together, basically. I mean, you know, they were okay. And the story of it gave some good insight into who Infinite is and what his motivation is, so that was pretty cool. I think that he came off as pretty neat. Not anything earth-shattering, but a functional character, you know, not bad, pretty good. But yeah, overall I'd say it's a very good game, particularly in comparison to what I expected from it, but not an absolutely fantastic game. It's not as good as Generations in my opinion. It definitely has a better story and like theming than Generations, and also has a better structure and feels more complete than Generations does. I mean, you know, Generations was a game where your hub that you select levels from is literally a white void. What the fuck? But yeah, this game definitely feels like a more finished package than Generations does. But at the same time, it doesn't have as good of mechanics as Generations does. It doesn't have as high of a skill ceiling or as much depth as Generations does. It doesn't have as good of level design as Generations does. And it also has a significantly inferior PC port to Generations. It's not a terrible PC port in my experience, although I will say that I got to it after the first patch had already been applied, which apparently fixed a lot of the problems that were present on immediate launch. But I still played this day one, and it was a basically acceptable PC port. It worked fine. I didn't have any problems with crashes. It accepted my gamepad just fine. It would switch between keyboard and gamepad control depending on which I hit. It had mouse support in the main menu at least, as I believe. I think that like on the mission select menu it may not have supported mouse, which kind of makes sense because you gotta like scroll around this globe in order to find stuff. Or no, yeah, it did support mouse, but you couldn't use the mouse to interact with the globe because that probably would have taken a bit of work to implement. So instead, if you use the mouse on that screen, it would just immediately pop up the mission list, which you can then just scroll up and down in, and is a much more mouse-friendly interface. But yeah, you know, the big important things that you expect a PC port to have were there. You know, it had multiple resolution options, it had multiple different frame rate options, including unlocked. It had windowed full screen and borderless window screen modes, had proper controller support, which could switch between mouse and keyboard and controller on a dime at any time. But it does have slightly lacking graphics options. There's not a whole lot available to you in terms of like changing character model quality or anything like that if you're looking to either improve it or knock it down in the interest of frame rate. And I also noticed that it was not super well optimized. I got some frame rate problems now and then. Nothing that was unplayable, mind you. It never dropped below 30, but it would fluctuate pretty wildly between 30 and 60, which can feel pretty fucking bad at times, particularly in stage 2, which is like a there was like some it seemed to be like in a cold area where there was frost on some things, and that seemed to like it seemed like the engine did not like that frost effect and would really drop the frame rate down when that happened. So that's not great, but yeah, so I would rank this game lower than Sonic Generations, but overall it's still a very good game. The PC port is mostly fine, with some problems which I'm hoping will be patched out eventually. And I would still recommend this game overall, with the caveat that if you don't like boost gameplay, you're not going to like this. If you don't like if you don't like a game that kind of expects you to care about the story and have that be a major part of the appeal, then you're probably not going to like this. If you don't like big set pieces in games and prefer it to be, you know, all like organic gameplay, then you're definitely not going to like this. I wouldn't recommend this as widely as, like, say, Sonic Mania, but if what I've described here sounds cool, if you like boost gameplay, if you like cool set pieces, if you think that that making a cool character who gets to be a fun underdog dude and you know, get to like rise up the ranks of the resistance sounds like a fun thing, then definitely check it out. It is definitely worth your time. You know, if all of that sounds like really great to you, then definitely go ahead and pick it up now at, you know, if all of that sounds really great to you, then it's definitely worth the $40 asking price. If you're a little bit more tentative on it, then maybe wait until it's 20 or 30. And of course, if that just doesn't appeal to you, then skip it, because you're just not going to like it. It's not for you. But yeah, overall, I'm on my Rosen meter here. I'm going to be giving this game a 7 out of 10.
Really good.
And that's all I got.